Hi, this is Chris Bennett, and we're live with Adapt, Create, and Innovate. And we have the pleasure today to be interviewing Amu Fowler, who is the founder of Startups Ignite. So, Amu, welcome. And before we
Thank
start,
you.
I want to send, thank you. And before we start, I want to send a shout out to the first responders, the healthcare workers, and the other workers on the line who are doing their thing through this COVID-19 pandemic to allow us to shelter in place and to do what we do in a positive way. So thanks to them for that. And Amu, I'm going to start this episode with a question for you. Uh, Give us a sound bite. Who are you and what is Startups Ignite about?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity. So my name is Amu Fowler. I'm the founding director of Startups Ignite. Startups Ignite is a accelerator and program based out of the DMV area, the DC, Maryland, Virginia region. A little bit about me. I guess I just love startups, right? I've had the startup bug, or I really was introduced to the world of startups shortly after I came to the US. And I think every day, right, I'm like trying to figure out like what can I do to facilitate positive action and change. And really the thing that I always come back to is startups because they are driving innovation and change, right? And that's what Startups Ignite is about, is really facilitating and supporting the startups that are going through all these, I would say, these struggles that you face as a founder to make your vision a reality because they want to see a change in the world. And it's been amazing supporting that.
Well, Amu, you've done a great segue into not only why we do adapt, create, and innovate from TIL, and our mission is to make it easier and less costly for underserved creative entrepreneurs to protect and monetize their intellectual property. We want to make the situation better. And it sounds like what Startups Ignite is doing can easily help to improve the situation we're experiencing in this COVID-19 environment. And that kind of takes us to our next question. Let's dig a little deeper. What is you think to be your purpose as an entrepreneur and a creative? And how does that translate to Startups Ignite?
Yeah, that's like, the biggest question in life, right? What is my purpose? I actually spent about 10 days one time, like really thinking about this as a part of my evening routine. What is my purpose, right? And Startup Ignite's purpose per se is not exactly the same as my purpose, but my purpose drives it, right? So I think, right, ultimately, the simplest form of my purpose is to really, I would think through the human experience as I live it, right? That's like just the most simplest answer that I came up with after like these 10 days of thinking every day, what's my purpose? It's just like, what can I do to really experience and life as I want it, or as it is, right? But as a part of, the goals that I pursue every day I'm like trying to adjust and commit to actions that I take as an individual to facilitate positive change. And not everything has to be changed. There are tons of things about this world that are absolutely positive that I love. But I'm a creator at heart. Right? I love creating things. I almost like I'm tempering that because I'm overly creative. But I know that change and taking positive actions, it starts with me, and I'm constantly every day trying to think about what is that thing that I can do. And again, what it comes back to is aligning myself with other people that are trying to make a change, right? It becomes kind of this natural kind of intersection supporting startup founders because they are trying to really make a big change in the world. They're usually trying to disrupt something. And that's kind of, where my fixture in the startup world tends to end up, you know, going back to. That's why I have such a fixture in the startup world, is because I like creating things. I want to help facilitate positive change, and I naturally align to people like you and others that are doing that.
Well, I want to thank you for that and say that we have a mutual admiration society. I think what you're trying to do, facilitating the progress of startups, uh, reflects on what you described as you perceive to be your purpose. And I will share that two things I've found to be true from my career. One is when I was 5, my mother described me as a solution looking for a problem, because I would go through the house trying to fix things that I perceived as being broken. Uh, I recognize that could be a double-edged sword. But the second thing that extends from that is through my career, when people have articulated challenges or problems, that's attracted to me, and I've volunteered to help them solve those. And that's led me down a path of some interesting creations and some interesting marks that help the world be a better place. So I came away from the whole thing, decided my purpose is self-actualization, to be the best I can be mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that kind of pivots us down to the next question, because a part of that was due to outrageous creativity. I was exposed to some information in an encyclopedia and just decided to do it, be the first in my family to get a higher education. I'm going to guess that somewhere in your background, and I know we discussed this a little bit, there is an impact by creativity and outrageous creativity. Is there anything you like to share from that perspective of outrageous creativity?
Mhm. I can't pinpoint an exact moment or like an exact like event that is outrageously creative, but like I was, saying earlier, I tend to be like overly creative. I'm like this, I guess this radio station, right? Or maybe the opposite of a radio station, a receiver, and I just like tend to soak in so much stimuli, right? And I'm constantly keeping my mind open. When it comes to creativity, I love ideas, and this is one of the reasons why I love startups, right? It's like I get to work on so many cool ideas. But yeah, I think, what I've been working on more is really taking all of those ideas, prioritizing those ideas, that creativity, and really trying to align that to a focused output, and really refining what the objective is that Startups Ignite and I am trying to achieve in any given moment, right? I wish that, I've had so many like terribly creative, but really terrible, like you should never execute on, marketing ideas, business model ideas, startup ideas, right? And I'm like, I've come to learn, I think, it's kind of like they say the Pareto principle. It's like only most of your effort or most of the results come from 20% of right 20% of your actual execution or the ideas. So I'm trying to like figure out what are the best ideas to be executing on. I think when it comes to Startups Ignite and when I founded it per se, I also can't really pinpoint that idea. I think, I've tried to think about it a little bit, but I think I kind of just, like followed my heart. I'm creative, right? And I'm a little bit spontaneous as well. When I think something should exist, I just kind of start on the actions to make it happen. And yeah, I didn't really give it much thought. I didn't really plan it out. I was just like, I wanted to create a startup community that was closer to me than DC was. I'm a mom, so it was kind of hard for me to try to always participate in the startup community in DC 5-6 years ago. The startup community in DC was pretty active, but not so much in, like the Reston area where I was. So I was like, okay, let me just create it. I should have known then that creating a startup community would take a lot more time than the drive to DC. But again, it wasn't really well thought out, but I'm really, really glad I did it, right? So just like what I did was I brought people together, just put a date on it, put actions around it, consistently brought people together. We did things together, all, around startup interests and around helping startups kind of succeed. Right? Maybe if I could pinpoint like an outrageously creative moment, or maybe the catalyst for this was when I first was introduced to the world of startups, probably over 10 years ago, right?
Okay.
I was told that 9 out of 10 startups fail. So logically, right, I'm like, okay, let me get my first 9 startups out of the way. Was kind of the path that I took. And then I found a lot of other people that were in this similar pursuit, right? And I wanted to stay connected with these people to learn and grow together. And that's kind of, what was the birthing of Startups Ignite. And then, I continued to water it, just, obsessively, like help it be facilitated, and more people came. And then there became people that, a lot of mentors and others, contributors that became fixtures in the community that kind of adopted this mission with me. So yeah, I think hopefully that answered the question.
It did, and 2 things popped into my mind. One is that innovation, even ideas that in retrospect may not appear to be wise, but they're the fuel for some of the great ideas that ultimately emerge through whatever process, which gets to the second thought. There's a noted entrepreneurship and creative guru, Peter Drucker, who wrote some books about how you can systematize innovation and creativity. So it sounds like you've actually been able to do that. You're like a vertically integrated creative entity where you generate ideas and then systematize it on top, with the goal being to share things that you think are productive for a broader community. That's pretty cool. And now, to talk about systemization, consistent with our process, our next question seeks to dig a little bit deeper. And it asks directly, who are you? And at a deeper level, what is your organization about?
Directly, who am I? That's another
Yes.
difficult question, right? Those are like one of the big questions in life: purpose and who am I?
We're peeling the onion. That's our strategy. We peel the onion.
Okay, so I can talk a little bit about where I'm from, right? I'm originally from Japan. I came here in 2009, right? I've had 2 sides of me, I think, that kind of always competed internally. To put it most simply, it's kind of the left brain and the right brain. If you just kind of group it, even though that's been kind of debunked, right? But I have a side of me that's super analytical, that likes to think in systems and process and algorithms, that likes to code, that likes to really like help people like figure out like what are the steps to make this thing repeatable. That side of me, right? And then I have another side that's extremely creative. Loves photography, loves design, loves writing, right? So it's like, it's been a struggle for me. And I think it kind of sometimes becomes a lack of focus when these 2 sides compete with each other. And I've had service businesses in both of those sides, right? And it helped me because being overly creative, I always had these outlets for both the, I would say the left brain side and then the right brain side. But again, this comes back to Startups Ignite, and why I kind of gravitated towards that and just the world of startups is actually this duality and being able to context switch and be good. I kind of call myself not like a T, I'm like a caterpillar, right? I have like a bunch of little legs. Like I have a bunch of little talents that I've cultivated out of interest because I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn things as well. But yeah, back to, the world of startups, having this kind of, I would call it almost like talent ADD works really well in supporting startups and being a startup founder, right? So yeah, I think that's a little bit about me. So I was a little disorganized. But I think, at Startups Ignite, right? Ultimately, like, it started off as a community. It started off as just a passion, a place to bring people together, to connect, where we can learn and grow and share things together. And it kind of evolved from the needs of the community, right? I think the community was then saying that, we're kind of like a community incubator. So then we kind of created a program. We started as kind of a digital incubator, a bi-weekly program.
Okay.
We aligned with co-working spaces, and we kind of started an incubator program. And then that little bit later on, we kind of morphed into an accelerator program. Throughout that, because we were born at a community, we were always doing the accelerator and our program, our official kind of like, I would say curated community. And then we were always supporting the larger community as well, because that's who we were, right? But yeah, I think, we're a collection of people, ideas, and processes and programs that really exist for a single purpose, which is to help startups to succeed and beat the odds, right? It's really amazing. It's been amazing kind of, knowing that you were at the forefront and constantly facilitated this mechanism where we're consistently seeing startups succeed that are in our community, that have gone through our programs.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. It brings to mind a couple of things that I think are related. First, I'll say we actually have a lot in common. To offer my comparison, I did Myers-Briggs when I started in a sales position with the phone company, and I was initially an INTP. And my career evolved, and I did a stint at what is now Verizon, but previously it was MCI. And MCI's culture was go-go. It was jokingly called many changes incessantly, many crazy individuals, things like that. When I took Myers-Briggs after leaving MCI, I was an ENTJ. And what we found is I was borderline on a couple of areas, so I could go from one to the other. And the reason that's, I think, relevant to your situation is because I have an analytical side. I love data. I love to organize things and plan and execute. And then I have a pretty social side too. But once I exhaust one energy side, I tend to like withdraw and go to the other one because they need to stay somewhat in balance. And that leads us to actually our next question to some extent. If someone asked me what was the source of my innovation, I would say it is my diversity and interest in ideas, my diversity in the analytical as well as the strategic, and trying to bring those together in unique, creative ways. The other source is, as my mom mentioned, is that I like to try to solve problems. I was in a meeting once with an executive who said, gee, it'd be really great if we had a system to target sales for our new line of business. And I just done quantitative methods in graduate school, and I looked at my boss and said, we can do that. He said, okay, go do it. And in 6 months, we'd actually done it. Algorithms and things like that. So the question for you, with that little bit of rambling, purposeful rambling background, is what's the underlying source of your innovation? What are the touchstones?
I think what you said earlier really resonated with me. And I also kind of purposefully, I think, changed from an INTJ to like a ENTJ or P, the J and P switch, and the I and E switch as well, right? So I think that, sometimes the Myers-Briggs can be a matter of, nurture, not nature, right? Which is interesting. And you can also change that, right? With the experiences that you have. And I think when you actually boil down anything in life, right, the source of it is you, right? And how you view the world, how you process the experiences, and how you decide to respond to them, right? But I think kind of, on kind of a more different note as well, right? When I look at innovation, and I guess inspiration for innovation, not the source of it, as the source comes from within, potentially the inspiration for making innovation, I look at the world, right? And I look for problems that potentially aren't solved yet, but can be solved, right? Because of the constraint of, what we can support. We can't support all problems. Some problems, they're going to take decades to solve, right? But, what is a problem that we can see measurable progress towards in a short period of time, right? And like, I try to ask a lot of questions in the process of innovation. And in our program at Startups Ignite, although I think we are trying to optimize the process of innovation and adapt it in accordance to this region or the startups that we support, I don't necessarily think that we're innovators per se, right? We facilitate innovation, but we do have ideas to kind of bring this at a larger scale, which would require innovation in the future, but we're not there yet. We're still 100% a support organization for startups. And I think we really draw inspiration for adaptations for the things that we do at Startups Ignite from within our own community, the problems that they're facing or feedback from them, right? And that's how we evolve, I think. Yeah, hopefully that answered the question. So, some of the things that we're constantly asking is, how can we design feedback loops to facilitate the next iteration of what we do, right? How can we design our next program to better facilitate and optimize personalized growth? We know that a one curriculum or one system doesn't work for everybody.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Amu. That lays a very helpful framework, and it transitions into the setup for our next question. And I will tell you that the question is, of the things we've talked about so far, how did those things come together to create value in your terms? And I will frame and provide some examples for that. To say, related to a point you mentioned previously, I believe that, and it's been said, people are the sum total of their life experiences. So for me, I had a life experience of my mom buying encyclopedias from a door-to-door salesperson when I was 8. And the context for that was we just experienced busing. So I was being bused to a predominantly white school, a predominantly black school. And we moved into a new neighborhood because my mom had a husband, and previously she'd been a single parent. And I was sitting on the front porch, and I saw this gentleman walking down the street, and I was alarmed because you didn't see like people that weren't black in our neighborhood. So I ran into the house. He knocks on the door. She invites him in and gives him some water, and they talk. And she agrees to pay $5 a month for 60 months for encyclopedias. And they would come in, and I read them like a drowning person was grabbing a lifeline. That set the tone for me, because one of the things I decided from the breadth of that information, which was horizon opening, was I wanted to make a positive difference in the world. And the other thing that my mom mentioned, obviously she had a significant influence on my life, was she said that it's not where you start, it's where you finish. So that's been kind of my raison d'etre, to borrow a French phrase, of trying to make a positive difference and using a lot of different information to do that. And that's how I create value from that perspective. So back to the question, how does all of those things you mentioned, and there's so many and numerous to mention to actually probably discuss this conversation, but how do they create value in Amu Fowler's terms?
Amu Fowler's terms. So I was prepared for this question in terms of Startups Ignite. How do we measure value? But from a personal point of view, right? I think, okay, so this is like a conversation that I have with some startups and sometimes siblings and others too, right? Or just anybody, that have this particular question, because let's say in terms of Startups Ignite, we've kind of created a community where it's pay it forward, and the intent behind it. I don't know exactly when I decided to create Startups Ignite, but I had the intent to create a community where people can help each other from probably over a decade ago.
Okay.
But like, you help who you can when you can in life, right? And you also get help from people in life. And I've seen sometimes, like I was talking to my sister the other day, and she was saying she really wanted to pay this person back who helped her when she was younger. And then I was like explaining to her, saying that maybe it's not about paying that person back. Maybe it's about paying somebody else in the world back, right? So sometimes the person that helps you isn't looking for that same measurement of I would say help back from you. Sometimes they are. Sometimes it is a quid pro quo, right? But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's deeper than that. So I think being able to be involved in the growth of someone, or just in someone else's life experience, that's like rewarding enough for me. And then being able to reach out and get help in my own personal mission and journey of trying to create change in a scaled way through startups. That's been an amazing journey for me.
Wow, thank you for that share and that definition of how it's creating value from your perspective. And on the sharing of value and sharing it and paying it forward into others, any suggestions on COVID-19 coping strategies that you like to share with the world today in general, and other entrepreneurs in particular?
Okay, so when I'm stressed out, right, or something is stressing me out, I try to refocus that energy into what can I do within my capacity of movement, and sometimes my capacity of movement or the constraints that I've made in my capacity of movement are in my head, right? I can do a lot more than I think I'm able to do, right? So, but in any case, I try to think of, what is within the actions that I can take to start moving towards the outcome that I want. And then I try to focus my efforts, my thinking, because I think intent and thoughts guide actions, which then make results, right? So I think that, that's kind of like a simple framework for anything. And then also just, for me, it comes naturally. I have so many ideas. So I'm constantly trying to refine and select the ideas that I have into something plausible and usable, but generate a lot of ideas. Try to generate as many ideas that I can, or that you can, because although the ideas might not be the best ideas, the process is important, I think. I think the process then helps you get to the thing that you want to execute on.
Yeah, I've listened to your approach, and I think that's right. There's almost like a daisy chain effect of coming up with ideas which may not be optimal, but they stimulate creativity in others, and it tends to raise the game, so to speak. And
Also,
so,
I think, sorry, one more thing,
oh,
reach out
please
to
do.
other people, right? In this, even though we're socially segregated, or I would say physically separated, we're, I think, more connected than we were before COVID-19 to some degree. So reach out to other people that can potentially help you overcome any obstacles, perceived or real, that you have.
Well, that's sage advice, and my hope would be that any creative entrepreneur or entrepreneur in general that hears this will take that to heart. Which gets us to what's next for you and for Startups Ignite.
What's next for me is the continued journey, right? It's one step in front of the other. It's, yeah, every day you make progress, right? I think, you know, in terms of like some events for Startups Ignite, we'll be launching our virtual cohort closer to fall. We'll be continuing with our community efforts in online as well. And yeah, we'll be continuing on our vision to really create a community and ecosystem that wins together, that succeeds together, and that learns together.
Way cool, way cool. Well, Amma, it's been a pleasure. And now our wrap-up question is, any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share before we adjourn?
Oh gosh, any parting words of wisdom? I didn't actually think about this one at all.
Take
No.
your time.
Okay, so parting words of wisdom to share with everyone. I think, you know, just again, like I said earlier, one step at a time, right? You build success through actions every day, and yeah, when you want something, right, you have to really, you just have to build on it day after day after day. It's a grind, but you'll get somewhere. And don't compare yourself with other things out there. Always be comparing yourself to yourself, right? From a little while ago.
Excellent. That's an excellent closing share. And I want to thank you so much, Amu Fowler. And thank you for what you do with Startups Ignite. And looking forward to hopefully opportunities to collaborate and co-create with you and your organization going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care and have fun in South Carolina.
Absolutely. Do you want to stop recording?
Yes, I'm about to do that.